Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their diverse stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you'd like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. On today's episode of Autism Stories, Rachel Caton joins us to discuss being a drag show performer and organizer. We also discuss Rachel's experience as a licensed cosmetologist and artist. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Rachel, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Doug, for having me. I'm really excited to talk about all of these things because I feel like this is a safe space for me to express myself. And when I feel safe enough to express myself, I talk more about more important things that people should probably be thinking about as in relation to like neurodivergence and, performance art and stuff like that. So yay, I'm excited.
And I'm excited to hear about all that stuff, but I'd like to start off by just kind of learning about your journey. Where would you say your story in the autistic community begins?
Starting from my early childhood years, I knew that I was different, and because of this, I always tried to stand up for those who are different, which, later learned about the strong sense of justice autistic people often feel. However, when you were a kid, sometimes one tends to be blissfully unaware about the world around them until they get older, and then they have moments where it is very obvious that people either dislike you or are off-put by you. And then you have trouble socializing with other kids. You were often left out of groups or bullied and just overall misunderstood. And it's almost like you are convinced by the surrounding world that this is quote unquote normal and that you just don't belong. And at the same time, I just didn't have the language at the time to describe my experiences or even know how to talk about them. Especially when you are young and you're dealing with an anxious cycle of repeated trauma from masking or trying to fit in to the world as a young autistic girl, it does a number on your self-worth and your mental health going into adulthood. And so over the past few years, I've done a lot of research on autism, mental health issues, and personality disorders, and started to become extremely interested in subjects related to that. So from my research, I've heard stories from other autistic people that truly resonated with me. And it's almost like they had either the same exact or an extremely similar experience as me, particularly with women with autism. They pretty much described most of my experiences to a T. And from what I researched, it seems like women and girls often miss the mark with being diagnosed with autism. And given resources, because the old diagnostic material was primarily studied on young boys and men. And in this society, women are raised differently and have a higher sense of social expectation that's not nearly as heavily put onto boys at a young age. For example, even from the early stages of, childhood, where boys, for example, even with toys, boys are given action figures and superheroes and trucks and stuff that's kind of more rough around the edges and more a little more action, and girls are given baby dolls and dresses and stuff like that, and dolls, and girls are just from a young age are just socialized to be more nurturing, more emotionally present, and less fighting and stuff with boys, so yes, like I said, women are young women and young men are just raised differently and women seem to have more of a higher sense of social expectation that's not as nearly as heavy put onto boys at a young age. And with that being said, the following of what I talk about will make a little bit more sense. So recently, I've talked with my parents about the possibility of having autism and wanting to get diagnosed. But they told me that they got me tested when I was little and said that I, according to the doctor, he just did not believe that I had autism or Asperger's because I was a girl and apparently I was too social. So instead, I got diagnosed with sensory integration dysfunction. Now, in the DSM-5, it is considered a sensory processing disorder, which my parents made arrangements and had me do exercises to try and cure, which of course helped me build skills and whatnot, but definitely did not cure me. I also remember being specifically sent to a specialist to analyze me in a group with other kids that I later learned were diagnosed with Asperger's or autism. Of course, I was the only girl in the room, and we all played Pokemon together, and it was my special interest at the time, so of course I felt comfortable enough in the room to talk to the other kids, like practically talk their ear off about my favorite Pokemon. Then I remembered finishing those group sessions and not being able to see those people again and never understood why. And I recently turned 26 and got access to all of my medical records, and I was extremely shocked to find Asperger's disorder marked on my medical record. Currently in the DSM-5, the term Asperger's isn't used anymore and is now considered to be under Autism Level 1, which goes to show that this was an old diagnosis, and I've had this on my record for years. Upon finding this out, I called my mom and asked about this, and then she said that she had no idea that I was diagnosed or had that on my medical record. Then I talked to my dad, and he described something along the lines that he was convinced I had Asperger's or autism, but the doctors refused to diagnose me officially because I'm a girl and too smart and too social. So from what I understand, there was a lot of medical gaslighting from doctors and specialists, like whether they meant to or not, maybe even confusion from my parents, because it's not like they have the vocabulary to even ask about these things, So, and given the period of time, the early 2000s, there wasn't enough research done on autism in girls. I also cannot blame my parents or even the doctors and specialists and not knowing things like this, especially with the lack of educational material and language to describe certain experiences. And with how young I was, it's not like I had the ability to fully stand up for myself in those cases. My parents also made sure that I had access to therapy and did their best to accommodate me in any way that they could. But there's still a part of me that feels a bit left behind, especially since I could have had the chance to receive specialized care and accommodations growing up. And with this information I have now, I have a stronger sense and understanding about who I am and what I have been through. This all helps me advocate not only for myself, but for other autistic and other neurodivergent people. Especially also realizing the intersectionality with LGBTQ+, or queer communities and the neurodivergent community. It makes me want to do anything that I can to advocate for those who need it to strengthen their voices.
I think that's a really interesting point you brought up about medical records, where I think a lot of times there are information in our medical records that, one, we don't want there, and two, we had no idea that were there.
It's so odd to me because, I don't think that would have been on my medical record had I not been diagnosed. So that means that I've been diagnosed this whole time, and either my parents didn't know or understand that, or I didn't know, and I also didn't know or understand it. And I'm like, okay, I'm having these experiences growing up, and I'm reading about other autistic women's experiences, and I'm like, holy crap, these are the exact same experiences that I have, and I resonate with those things. And it's like, now that I have this obvious, hey, you're autistic, and it's on your medical record, that just brings it home for me, really.
Now, I've had the privilege to see you perform as a drag performer known as Clara T. I'm wondering if you see your neurodivergence in any way as it helps your performances.
I have a background in musical theater and vocal performance, and I think just in general, my autistic lack of caring or realizing about social expectations helps my performances to be more authentic to me. I also think that based on shared experiences with other autistic people, that autistic people tend to have a very colorful inner world, and those very colorful inner worlds tend to differ greatly from neurotypical people and neurotypical society. Oftentimes, when autistic people share their inner world with others, people are most likely taken aback by how passionate we are about the things that we like. And that passion for what we like can come off in our tone of voice, our body movements, our clothing, our living spaces, and etc. And I've heard things like being said about me like, oh, she's so unapologetic. And I don't think neurotypical people have nearly the same amount of passion for the things they enjoy, or at least not on the outside. And when we express strong emotions like joy simply because it differs from the way other people express joy, people are sometimes off-put by it, which is a shame because as an autistic person, sharing my special interests and sharing things about myself is basically the equivalent of saying, hey, I want to be your friend. Hey, I want to get to know you. Hey, I want you to connect with me so I can connect with you. Like, it's literally how I best know how to connect with people. And life can get lonely and humans are social creatures, and making connections is how we can help uplift each other and keep each other safe. I just long for connection like anyone else, and asking for connections makes one vulnerable. And drag being a performance art, and the performance art having the need to have the stage filled with personality, and the performer, like the drag performer, needing a stage presence to keep the audience engaged. I think my neurodivergence gives me an advantage in the performance art of drag because I have the freedom to do whatever I want. Like, I get to create what I want to create, and I'm able to bring that to the stage and share it with others. It's such a wonderful thing because being able to share my special interests through my drag performances helps me connect with a lot of people at the same time.
Now, as autistic people, being our authentic selves is something that's always an ongoing process because we've been given so many messages that contradict who we truly are. So, in thinking about that, one thing that really sticks out to me in not only seeing you, but other drag performers perform is the joy that each of you seems to be experiencing in those moments. So how has being a drag performer helped you to become more of your authentic self?
I want to shout out firstly to Dr. Lady J for teaching me and others about drag history. So please give her a follow because she is super educated on the subject and she does live lectures from time to time. So drag itself has roots in theater and as well as being an underground LGBTQ plus art. For example, back in traditional ancient times, women were not allowed on stage, so men would often have to play female parts and female roles and dress as women, you know. So that's historically where different gender presentation on stage has its start. And in America back in the day, especially around when Reagan was president, it was illegal to be gay and quite dangerous to present yourself as openly queer in public due to the fear-mongering from the far right. So with that being said, the nightlife districts became a common place where LGBTQ plus people would meet and hang out and form community, which then led to those underground types of performance art that play with and go against gender norms being created and expressed. So I'm glad you asked me this because I honestly love drag and all that it stands for when it comes to unapologetic self-expression. I was a theater kid back in the day, like later middle school and during high school, and I always tended to struggle with performing as specific characters because, well, in order to act well, you need to get into the minds and hearts of those characters to play them well on stage, and sometimes that was a struggle for me because it just felt like an advanced form of masking, aka, you know, suppressing oneself to pretend to be someone or something else in order to fit in within the rest of the society or act like in a big group, which can be quite painful to experience. It wasn't until I got the role as Lisa in the play David and Lisa, which is literally about mentally ill, neurodivergent young adults trying to navigate the world around them, and forming friendships despite the hardships they personally face. And my connections and similarities with the character Lisa and her neurodivergence in her character really resonated with me because it felt so natural to play as her because she basically was me in a lot of ways, which then made me feel more empowered to present the way that I do on stage when I do drag now, because I think even though drag itself tells us that we can be ourselves, I find a lot of people within the drag community, I just see them struggling to be themselves and they're too worried about what everyone else thinks of them, which is why I create spaces and do so so people can know that they are loved and can just let go and be themselves on stage and perform something that they're proud of creating. So as much as I feel drag has helped me express my authentic self, I honestly feel the other way around it. I feel that being my authentic self has helped me become a better drag performer.
You aren't just a drag performer, you're also a drag organizer. So, from what I understand, you've experienced threats when promoting drag events. Do you have suggestions for other drag organizers in promoting their events, but at the same time maintaining their safety?
Yeah, so, that was correct. I'm also an organizer as well, and I've learned quite a lot over my years of organizing and hosting shows. A few years back, when the rise of the far right surrounding laws being passed about drag performance art, I started hosting a few drag shows at a local coffee shop in Kent called Scribbles. As much as we know, like, drag has its roots in just, like, nightlife and performance in bars and everything. I think that, the reason that was a thing is because it was, again, illegal to be gay in public and be yourself in public. And so people would go to, nightclubs and everything and, like, do underground stuff. And, with that underground stuff comes with, like, more adult things like drugs and alcohol and sex and violence, like, stuff like that. But I feel like, the heart of drag is being yourself. And I think that, there's other things that have developed over time out of nightclubs, like drag story time and, like, drag brunches, there's the ability, like, drag is so expansive. It's not just for adults, like, it can be for literally anyone. And so that's why I started doing shows at Scribbles, because I wanted to be all ages and be, like, not necessarily geared towards just children, but, like, for everybody. And that's another reason why I really appreciate the Neurodiverse Culture Festival drag show, is so that we can just kind of be up there, and it doesn't necessarily, we don't have to be performing Baby Shark, like, but we can make it family friendly, And so the basic problem that happened is because the far right is very gung-ho about, they think drag is just for adults, and then it's like, they try to just, like, tell people, like, that drag is just for adults, and that, we're grooming kids if we're allowing them into our space, and it's like, well, I'm not trying to groom your children, ma'am. Like, I don't want anything to do with your children. Like, but if I can tell these younger adults or younger kids that, they can be themselves, that's my biggest thing that I want to spread, is that I want people to be themselves and be more open-minded and be kind to each other. Basically, the problem that arose from that is, like, the far right people were threatening my show because they're under the impression that drag is an adult, like, sexually oriented art, and in some cases it is, in some cases it's not. So really, it's like the hate is coming from, like, just a general misconception and just like a hatred for gay people and everything. And so I had to basically, like, I had to stop promoting my show. I had to literally rely on the word of mouth for that show. And honestly, a lot of the times when I promote shows now, because of the trauma that I faced from that, I tend to just do word of mouth and, like, invite my friends and my family and people that they know. And, it's just, it was a scary time. Oh my God. But, at that time, I didn't know what to do, so I really, I reached out to a more seasoned performer named Veranda Lanai, and she really goes all out there and protests and everything, and she has a lot of experience in community organization. So I reached out to her, and she gave me some really great advice, and it's really nice. Yeah, my biggest advice is really, if you're feeling scared or afraid of something bad happening with your show, especially if you're getting threats, please lean on your community and ask for help, for advice from elders and other organization, or other organizers or activists in your community. There's a lot of power in numbers, and even more power in helping each other achieve goals. And then my own personal suggestions, if you're worried about people that you don't want coming into your events, what I usually do is I sell pre-sale tickets online for a cheaper cost, which then, the cheaper the ticket, the more likely people are going to be like, oh my gosh, we got to get him now. We got to get him now. So then it fills up that room with those people. And then what you do is you charge double at the door the day of. So then people that aren't supposed to be there are not going to be in there. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I try to think of it as like not only a marketing tactic for people to just get through the door and like, be able to do that, but also it keeps like naysayers out. Like, cause I don't think that anybody can come through the door if if the tickets are $10 online and they decide to come in that day of and try to pay to get in, then it's like, okay, what am I, $20? Like, I'm not paying $20 at the door,
Yeah.
So that's typically like my, like, not only is it a marketing tactic, but it's also a safety tactic. Also, just knowing where the exits are and everything, the emergency exits, you got to let people know where they are when you're doing like an inside event. And then that's pretty much all that I have in my brain right now. I'm like vomiting information.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm boring, but I would say I'm really no fun at all. And I realize this when I watch drag performances, as I think about when I'm seeing these wonderful performances, I think about the executive functioning of it all.
Yeah.
So, all the planning and time management that it seems that it's got to be involved in it. So I'm wondering if there are any ways organizing drag has impacted your executive functioning skills.
Well, this is gonna just call out my autistic rigidity. This is gonna straight up, like, I'm just like, I get so hyper focused on something, and then I end up like, getting so hyper focused on like a specific task, and I just completely don't think of anything else. But so running events contains a lot of multiple moving parts. There needs to be like a set date, time, location. There needs to be a dressing room for performers to get ready. And you need to make sure all performers turn in their music on time and know the expectations of the show. All of this requires a lot of communication and a lot of personal discipline. Thank you, autistic rigidity. And it altogether seems very overwhelming, which is why in order to make things happen, I need to create a list for myself, like a handwritten list that I can physically cross out, or else I will forget it and it will not get done. I may look like I am all put together when it comes to events like this, but in reality, I'm very much a scatterbrain when it comes to recalling information. And in order to counteract it, I have to have a list of things I need to do in order to make things work. When I'm also doing a big event, I also have a notebook of my set lists and other things I need during the show that other people oftentimes may not need to use because of their ability to recall all of the information. Executive function is extremely hard for neurodivergent people sometimes, especially planning things with multiple moving parts. And with other things going on in their life emotionally, it causes a lot of people to completely shut down, me included. And I'm just very lucky that in my situation, my partner helps me a lot with taking care of the apartment and helping me organize things, which helps me to be able to focus on important upcoming tasks I need to do for shows. Though it is obvious when I have a big upcoming show that I tend to hyper focus on those tasks to get them done, and I tend to be to put literally everything else on the back burner, including feeding myself. Like, I find the less buildup of tasks makes my day a lot easier and helps me improve my executive function. I also tend to work better with a time constraint. It helps me be able to create goals a lot easier with an expected time frame. And I feel like with an expected time frame, it helps me have a little bit of structure and routine. That helps like kind of counteract like the executive dysfunction that I face sometimes.
You're a licensed cosmetologist.
Yes.
And artist. And I know as artistic people, getting our haircut can be overwhelming.
Absolutely.
What's been your experience in reducing that overwhelm?
It's my job as a cosmetologist, a beauty professional, to make sure that my clients are comfortable. And I've worked in many different places. Like, I don't have any notes. I'm just kind of openly talking about this. But I've worked in so many different places. some quieter and some more loud, and I find like I've recognized a pattern within like the places that I've worked that the louder and more the more sensory distractions that are in the area, the more upset the child or the autistic person is going to be getting their hair cut. And I've even tested this out, like, because at my previous workplace, I used to work at Lady Jane's Haircuts for Men, and it's so like overstimulating in there because we have like at least 6 to 8 girls working at the same time. Everybody's having a different conversation. There's music playing, there's TVs playing, and their lights are really bright, and it's just really an overall like sensory hell experience, including me for me as a professional working on someone. And we've had like, multiple kids come through there and multiple like autistic kids too, and autistic people go through there, and all the time, like they just are having a hard time, like the worst time ever. And there was this one day where an autistic kid that I've like cut his hair before, I was in the space by myself, so I had turned all the TVs off, I turned the music off, and I just had us sitting there with our just sitting in that silence together. I've realized that the sensory input that I reduce around, like the better the experience is going to be for just the kid or the autistic person in general. Just like that just made me want to, and it also like helped my experience as well. Like, cause when there's too much stuff going on around me, like it makes it really hard for me to focus, and it makes me really like anxious and upset. Like I said, it's my job as a professional to make sure that my customers and my clients feel happy and healthy. And so that encouraged me to just like quit that specific job and move all my clients to a different place. So I started my own salon studio. I opened my own salon studio space. And so I work currently at Lavender Lane's Beauty Studios, and the environment there is so much more like calm and chill. It's more like home. My little space is, I've painted the walls my favorite colors, and like, I have like graffiti designs on them, and I'm able to like be myself there in my own little space and not have people bother me. And it's just, I think it's like, booth renting is just generally the way to go when you want to be a cosmetologist. But yeah, like I said, I just think really the less sensory input that you have in your salon, the easier time everybody's going to have. I'm really happy that I get to, provide that space for people, because I think that there's just such a big lack of understanding. The more sensory input or sensory distractions in the environment, the more hell it's going to be. And I mean, it's already like getting like the hair sprayed with water and like, things touching your face is already overwhelming. So it's like, focus on that rather than everything else at the same time. It can help a lot. So, and even with myself, I get overwhelmed when other people are cutting my hair. So that's why I cut my own hair. But but I know what I'm doing though. So it's a little bit easier for me to do that than someone else. So I'm just really glad that I can offer that better experience to people for real.
I'm always amazed when people cut their own hair. I do not have any close to the motor skills to even imagine doing that.
Yeah, it's really difficult because, I'm trained to have my arms like, in front of me, right? But I have to basically do the opposite. Like, I have to like get a mirror and like do the absolute opposite action that I'm used to. So it's a little bit scary cutting your own hair, even when you do know what you're doing.
I know several other autistic people that cut their own hair. They're not trained like you.
Right.
And it seems like they do a pretty good job, but I'm just wondering if that's due to kind of so many of the barriers of going on into the community to get a haircut.
Yeah, I think that definitely is, I would say that's definitely one of the barriers. I think also from an artistic point of view too, I think autistic people really have their own sense of style. They have their own sense of like what they want to look like. And it's really hard to like, I've had so many people come to me and tell me like, oh my gosh, like I went somewhere and I showed the stylist a picture, and then, you know, this is coming from my autistic friends that are very alternative, and they really like all the punk and like the like Harajuku hair, or like, you know, like hime cuts and stuff like that, which is what I like to do a lot. So that's why people come to me for that. Anyway, so they would go to a hairstylist, and usually it's kind of like an older hairstylist, and, you know, they describe, hey, this is what I want. And then the stylist will either not know what to do, or they'll be like, no, I think you'd look better with this. And it's like, okay, but this is what I want, you know, and you're not listening to me and what I want. And so that's why I really try to listen to what they want, because I feel like, you know, I want people to, like, I'll make suggestions, but like ultimately I want to give somebody the haircut or hair color that they want, you know? And that's like why I feel like a lot of autistic people just end up cutting their own hair or like doing their own thing, because they feel like that's what represents them best. And then they, you know, I feel a lot of people don't want to listen to autistic people either, or the autistic person may not even have like the vocabulary to describe or like be able to, you know, put it in a way where neurotypical people will understand. And so that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that people get what they want, and like, you know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a stylist, you know, helping them reflect their true self.
Because there's so many times where our autonomy has been stripped of us, and it's like, like now you're doing it yet again with my hair. Like, this is on my body, and
yeah, like this, it's the overall, like, it's so great that you put that you mentioned that, Doug, because it's true. Because like our autonomy has been stripped from us from like day one, like, and that's why it is so incredibly difficult to go in this world, just have people tell you, oh no, you're not supposed to be like this, or you're not supposed to be like that. And I've had this happen not only with like just my personality in general, like in the salon, but also with my drag. And it's just like, you don't even understand how being authentically me means to me, you know? Like, this is all I know, and this is what makes me comfortable. So who are you to tell me that I can't be this way?
Yeah.
It's not hurting you. Like, it's not hurting you.
Not one bit.
That's like, so I wonder what, it's the autistic urge to understand why. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I've never understood it, and it's so frustrating. So that's why I genuinely am just like, I want to honor the person that's in my chair, and I want to see their vision, and I want to, you know, help them reflect their own true self and what they like, you know. So it's such an honor whenever an autistic person is in my chair, or, you know, whenever somebody trusts me with their hair and trust my artistic vision, because, like, you know, hair is so important to people, and it helps people with their identity and helps them express themselves and their creativity. So it's always so wonderful that people trust me to do your hair. Like, that's such an honor, you know. Like, that's such an honor. I also do like makeup and nails and stuff too, so it's also just like anybody who trusts me with anything that is related to anything like aesthetic wise for them. Like, it's so really, it's just an honor to be able to do that for them.
And then, talking about that honor, how can our listeners learn more about you and your services?
So I'm on Facebook, Rachel Caton. You can look me up on there. I try to post as much as I can. I just opened my salon studio, so I'm trying to work on creating a salon, like a page, like a business page and everything. Like, I just try to take it one step at a time, because this is a really new thing for me, and it's very scary. And I have to like clip my brain in a different type of motion, because it's a new routine that I have. Like, it's a new routine. So also I have a main Instagram, and it's at Sunreii, so SUNREII, and that's my main Instagram, where I kind of typically just post like a smorgasbord of everything that I like and everything that I do. But then I do have a hair Instagram that I'm again trying to like come up with, but I have that, and I just need to update it. But like I said, yes, I'm on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on Snapchat. So if you want to Snapchat me, we can Snapchat. I feel like I'm missing something, but that's all I can think of right now. Yeah.
Well, Rachel, I really appreciate you being on Autism Stories today. I was very excited to have this conversation, and it more than met my expectations.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. Yes, like I said, follow me on Facebook. You can add me on Facebook. You can message me anytime, as well as Instagram. Please message me anytime if you're like a local person to like, or if you're local to Akron, Ohio. That's where my salon studio is. And if you are having trouble, I just want to talk to like anybody, like anybody listening. It's like if you're having trouble finding a hairstylist or somebody that is really truly listens to you, please consider coming to my salon and let me take care of your hair and let me take care of you. I post about my drag performances that I'm going to be in. I also try to update Facebook and Instagram with where I'm going to be, what shows I'm hosting and everything. I also just got a gig, a performance gig at Ichiraku Ramen in Painesville. So I'll start doing shows there. And then of course, when we plan the next Neurodivergent Culture Festival drag show together with Doug, we will definitely let people know. But yes, I hope to connect with more people through the things that I like, and whether it be my drag performance art or podcasts or theming my salon. I like connecting with people. It's fun.
Thanks so much to Rachel for the conversation. To learn more about Rachel, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you, and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode regarding if you've ever been to a drag show. And if so, what were your favorite parts of that experience? Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self-directed, purpose-driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. So please join us today to experience judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.